Okay, welcome to the Cupertino City Council meeting of July 21st, 2020. Madam City Clerk, can you conduct the roll call, please?
Councilmember Chow?
Yeah.
Councilmember Sinks?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Paul?
Here.
Mayor Sharp?
Here. Okay. First, I would like to report out on our closed sessions, the last two closed sessions. We had a closed session on July 14th, Public Employee Performance Evaluation, Government Code Section 54957B, Title City Manager. We conducted the annual evaluation of the city manager. No reportable action was taken. Item 2, conference with labor negotiators, Government Code 54957.6, agency designated representatives. So myself and Councilmember Sinks were announced as the agency designated representatives to negotiate with the city manager regarding her salary, and council conferred with us regarding the salary and compensation of the city manager. No reportable action was taken. From the closed session meeting today, conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6, designated representatives, myself and Councilmember Rod Sinks. The unrepresented employee was the city manager. An additional conference with negotiators was held regarding the salary and compensation of the city manager. No reportable action was taken. Now we are on to ceremonial matters. The first one is a presentation from the Cupertino Poet Laureate, Jingjing Yang. So is Jingjing here?
Good evening, Mayor. I'll be introducing this item.
Okay, great.
Good morning, or good evening, Mayor, Honorable City Council, and City Manager. I'm Christine Hannell. I'm the Assistant Director of Cupertino Parks and Recreation Department, as well as the staff liaison to the Library Commission. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight to share with you all some amazing poetry. We have a PowerPoint, and we can begin that now.
You don't need anything from me here, do you?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I thought it was maybe Kirsten that was going to pull it up.
Oh, okay. We were
not.
We were waiting for you to pull it up. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. I don't have access on my end.
Can the video please cue up the presentation? Do you have that video?
Checking. We don't have that video file, so unless the control room has it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have the file name?
It should have been the Poet Laureate presentation.
I don't see those uploaded to the presentation folder, so I don't know who has received that.
Okay. Well, I can. I think
Christine, this is Diane Thompson. I can, if I can share my screen, I can show the presentation.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Oops. Is that working?
Diane, you have a permission to share your document. So if you click on the share screen and maybe open up your file.
I just did that. I just did share screen and I opened the document.
And then you clicked on that document. It's not just enough to open it. You've got to actually click on that's what you're sharing.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Diane.
Yay.
Thank you
Hey,
so
if you-
much. I appreciate your help with this.
If you're reliant on me for technology, that's not necessarily a good thing.
And then Diane, switch it to slideshow instead of the view you have now. You see slideshow at the top?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so thank you very much. I appreciate your patience. I'm here tonight with Jingjing Yang, our Cupertino Poet Laureate, and Grace Kerr, a student poet from Miller Middle School. Next slide, please.
You there, Diane?
Yes, can you see the Poet Laureate
Yes.
program?
Yeah, next slide.
Yes, next slide.
Okay.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Christine.
Hello, Jingjing. We're just waiting for the presentation for the next slide, please.
Okay. You having trouble, Diane?
No, I'm on slide 4.
No, but we're only seeing slide 1.
Okay, let's go back to slide 2 and see if I can make that happen.
Click on slide 2 on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
So it's not working?
No, we
What
still
I'm
see
seeing
the
is
first
slide. Okay, let's go out of here then.
You're not in presentation mode, so maybe
Right,
if
that
you
may be
were-
the problem, that you're still not in presentation mode.
Okay, so I'm in the.
There we go.
program.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, is that
Thank you.
good?
Yeah.
Okay, just a refresher for our audience. The Cupertino Poet Laureate is a volunteer position. It is a 2-year term position that is sponsored by the City of Cupertino as well as the Library Commission. We are so fortunate to have a practicing poet with professional recognition. The purpose of the Poet Laureate program is to provide the residents of Cupertino with programs, workshops, and events which introduce and reinforce poetry as an enriching cultural art form, and it's open and accessible to all our community. Next slide, please. Even though we've had a shelter in place, our Cupertino Poet Laureate has been very busy. She has hosted already 1 poetry pen pal workshop, and the second is scheduled to begin, or to occur actually, on Saturday, July 25th at 11 a.m. She's taken part in Cupertino Cares program with a poetry slam, and she's assisting with the Poetry Windows project, which we'll be talking about tonight. Next slide. The Cupertino Rotary Club sponsored the Student Poetry Contest, and they invited our current Cupertino Poet Laureate to be a judge, along with some past Cupertino Poet Laureates. This was a wonderful opportunity for teens in the community to express themselves with regards to the pandemic. There were 124 poems submitted by high school students and middle school students that were residing in the Fremont Union High School District and the Cupertino Union District. Next. Our Cupertino Poet Laureate, Jingjing Yang, is here tonight, and she will be sharing with us one of her beautiful poems.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mr. and Mrs. City Commissioners. I feel fortunate being the Cupertino Poet Laureate at this very unfortunate time. It has been provided me the opportunities of practicing virtual reality to host a monthly online Saturday poetry workshop. This coming Saturday is going to be number 4 with the library's co-host across the states, meeting poets from all over the world and visualize this wonderful youth poetry window project. Poetry is about hope. Like Emily Dickinson said, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tunes without words and never stops at all. Now I'm going to read my version of hope in a poetic way entitled of Sky is on Fire. Sky is on fire. Air is a liar. We thought it was fresh oxygen. It blows wicked virus. The true invisible assassin. The ferocious night falls. Lives are taken more and more. Fears and tears building a wailing wall. Cities on lockdown. Masks must be worn. Social distant hearts fear torn. Sky is sobbing. Its teardrops pouring down to the ocean. Thunder crashing on top of the mountain. 4 months later, shelter in place, still in order. COVID-19 vaccine is under development. Poets zooming to break silence and isolation. Children's virtual classes have begun. Man versus pandemic. When would this battle end? Any silver lining? Hope one day soon, our borders reopens to the world again. Rainbows reach out to all continents. Let's meet for a cup of coffee or a book of poetry in that sunny, victorious morning. Thank you. Now I'm going to introduce the Cupertino Rotary Poetry Contest first place winner from Miller Middle School, Grace Kerr. She's going to read for us her winning poem, Story Made from Shadows.
Story made from shadows. I was born in a world of smoke. They covered with my eyes with gauze, swabbed my flesh clean. I was a child then, and the shadows of men and women in white coats walking across my room became my best friends. The red lines around my mouth and nose made my skin raw, and my ears buzzed with the heaving of my own chest like musty whispers. Every 2 hours, 2 nurses nudged me, positioning pillows behind my back and telling me to rest on the other side of my body. I dreamed of a world with sunrises coloring the sky pink and orange. I dreamed of standing by myself, feet buried in the sand, crabs tickling the soles of my feet, while the waves came and hugged my splintered shins. As years swung by, my lungs grew stronger. I went to school in a wheelchair, but I loved learning about how my white blood cells battled the barbaric bacteria. I volunteered at my local hospital, serving hot water and cuddling newborn babies. 2020 was the year where schools around the nation closed, and so did local shops. There were people dying all around the world. We covered ourselves in masks and gloves, scrubbed our hands with soap until the skin cracked. My lungs had taught me to help heal my community. I sewed masks for the nurses and doctors at my local hospitals, cooked pots of stew and rice to serve, to the people without homes. Together with my mother, father, sister, and friends, I decorated thank you cards and cut flowers from my backyard. I gave the coins I'd collected in my piggy bank to the local food bank, asking my friends and teachers if they could do the same. We joined hands, clenching onto the warmth and love. We were born into a year of smoke, and we smiled, knowing that the flame ahead could not burn us.
Thank you, Chris and Jing, for the beautiful and inspiring poems. The community is invited to view and read the poems from the participants who placed first, second, and third place in the middle and high school categories, along with 8 honorable mention recipients. The 14 poems will be on display in the windows of our own Cupertino Library beginning in early August, and they will be on exhibit for approximately 2 months. We hope the community will cherish these heartwarming literary pieces as they are out on their evening strolls or during the day. Thank you.
Oh, Christine, are they available online as well?
I'm sure that's something that we can certainly look into, but they will be posted in the windows, but I will look into that. I will talk
Yeah.
to.
That would be great if people could access them online.
Yeah, that's a
It
wonderful.
is online. Sorry, it is online on the Rotary website.
Oh, okay, great. Maybe we can put a link on our website over to the Rotary website. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, we are on to postponements. Madam City Clerk, are there any postponements?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 2 postponements. Item number 16, second reading of the municipal code amendments to regulate short-term rental activity in the city has been postponed by the city manager. The item has been continued to a date to be determined. And second, item number 21, authorization to amend the current agreement with Lifetime Tennis has been postponed by the city manager to a date to be determined.
Okay, very, very good. Is that till the next council meeting, which is quite a while? I mean, for both of those. Madam City Manager, when will we be postponing those to?
The Lifetime one could possibly be back at the August, forget the date, the next council meeting, which is August
18th.
What is it?
18th.
August 18th. And the STR second reading would be possibly sometime after that, maybe October, September, somewhere in there.
Okay, very good. We are on to oral communications. So if everyone...
Can we still discuss that item? Because I would like to know, would we keep the inaction date or would we delay the inaction date also? Now that
we would likely still keep it. If you're talking about the enactment date, it would be like still January 2021.
Okay.
That'd be the current plan. If there's a reason to pull it forward and everybody's ready, we can do that.
Okay, we're on to oral communications. If you would like to speak, you get 3 minutes. You can raise your hand. I see one hand raised so far. Jasmine Wong, welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go. Hi.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Hello. I am a recent graduate from Cupertino High School, and I am speaking today in support of the Rainbow Crosswalk as a member of CALA, which stands for the Cupertino Association of Youth LGBTQ Advocates. To be completely honest, I was not very invested in the installation of the Rainbow Crosswalk when I first heard about it. I am very privileged in that I have not been overtly discriminated against because of my sexual orientation or gender expression, a large part due to my being able to pass as heteronormative in my daily life. I thought that Cupertino was an inclusive city because I personally felt included. So it was very surprising to me that something as simple as showing solidarity for the Pride movement would receive so much opposition from our city officials. I thought that enough progress had been made in the past, such as with the annual Pride flag raising, that this Rainbow Crosswalk would be an easy addition. After some discussion with others, I find the leadership here to be incredibly subpar. I find it disillusioning that our elected city members find it a low priority to invest in the simple acknowledgement of our LGBT community. Our Rainbow Crosswalk petition was sent in June, and there was no response until I sent a follow-up email a few weeks later. In reply, Mayor Sharp sent a 2-sentence response citing a regulation that doesn't even prohibit what we're asking for. After over 500 people collectively advocated for the installation of a rainbow crosswalk, I am still very disappointed in Mayor Sharp's excuse for a response. Claiming that the Public Works Department is not willing to install a rainbow crosswalk is a lazy way to refuse responsibility for this matter. And it also shows how our city council members easily give up on supporting the LGBT community when a minor inconvenience happens. And as if this wasn't already a very weak show of leadership, Mayor Sharp attempted to steal all credit for this rainbow crosswalk, describing how he was the one who advocated for building this crosswalk, as if the advocacy of the 500-plus petition signers, the need for me to both send a follow-up email and discuss the issue on a public platform, and the fact that so many of us are here today are not the only reasons this subject is being pushed forward in the first place. I believe that other people here can address the excuses of legal regulations, safety issues, and whatever else is brought up much better than I can. The main point that I want to drive home is that while I can respect people's rights to their own beliefs, I would expect our city council members to agree that rights for minority groups are fundamentally a good thing. And I want our elected members of the political body to hold themselves to this standard of supporting inclusion and diversity in the community. If a rainbow crosswalk does not hold much meaning for you because you have never faced discrimination for your sexual or gender identity, then I want to challenge you to think about the type of privilege it takes in order to make that statement, and then think about those who can't. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Excuse me, Leon. Before we go on, I would like our Public Works Director to please explain the reasons why we are not allowed to do that.
No.
I was in favor of it, and I would be thrilled to have it, but if Roger could please explain the situation.
Can I first clarify? I have not ever received. This is the first time I have heard about this on the city council meeting, and I just checked my email. The only email I have received about this was last week on the 13th of July. So this is only 1 week after the first ever email that I have received. So I feel that there is some miscommunication because I feel that the whole council was being accused of not responding when the residents did not reach out to the council members.
Right, this was on Nextdoor that I reached out. But Roger, could you please explain the situation?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Mayor. Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. There has been correspondence, and I was aware of the request, and the MUTCD, which is the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, I believe it's in part 3 of that document. It's very specific that crosswalks are to be white in color or yellow in color if they're within, I believe, 1,000 feet of the pool, and it does expressly prohibit any other colors within the boundaries of the white or yellow, because I think the fear is that it takes away from the contrast of the crosswalk to the asphalt. So it is a MUTCD regulation, and I'd be happy to follow up with anyone regarding the exact citation.
Okay, so can you explain why so many other cities have done this in violation? I mean, what is the penalty?
Well, I mean, there's a risk when you don't follow the regulations, and if if there were an incident where someone was to be to have property damage or injured, they would point back and look at the conditions that were created.
Okay.
Can I also add a little bit? I know a little bit about this
Sure.
one. About, I would say now, 6 or 8 months ago, I was contacted by a member of the public making this request. And the request was more of the nature of how much would something like this cost? And can you provide me an estimate if we were allowed to do it so I can go do some fundraising? So I provided a couple of snapshots of an example I saw of this in San Francisco that would perhaps not cloud the white part of the crosswalk so much, and provided that to our Public Works Department, who then provided an estimate back to this individual. And so what I'd like to do is maybe have an offline conversation with Jasmine. Jasmine, if you could send me an email, I'm at debf@cupertino.org, and we can talk through the materials we have.
Okay, I'll let everyone else speak now in World Communications. Next, we have Jared Liao. Welcome, Jared.
Hello, yes?
Yes.
Well, as a KALA member, I am here to speak in support of the proposed Cupertino Rainbow Crosswalk. Although, along with many others, I believe that painting a rainbow crosswalk in Main Street would make for a fantastically non-subtle show of solidarity. Main Street is a social and cultural hub of the city. Each day it draws in crowds of people all from all over Cupertino, boasting one of the largest collections of restaurants and boba places I've ever seen. Even in the pandemic, it has still managed to stay populated somehow. Located across from Cupertino High School, it is also a regular haunt for the 500 plus students and many staff. Long story short, Main Street is the optimal location for the rainbow crosswalk to be painted, as it will be exposed to the great number of people, many of whom are in the most vulnerable periods of their lives. In doing so, we will show our LGBTQ+ community that they are not only recognized, but respected and appreciated. However, I have come to understand that the city has decided to block construction of such a project, citing Caltrans regulations against colored crosswalks. In doing so, they have conveniently ignored the many other crosswalks constructed in spite of these regulations, including the red crosswalk right in front of the Cupertino Post Office. Why they decide to be so strict on this specific crosswalk, I have no idea. There are many implications that can be drawn from this, but I'm not here to discuss that. Instead, I implore the City Council to please reconsider and put the rainbow crosswalk into place. Thank you.
Okay, next is Justin Lee. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hello, council members. My name is Justin Lee, and I am a recent graduate of Cupertino High School, as well as a member of also Cupertino Association of Youth LGBTQ+ Advocates. I'm here to talk about the recent petition for a rainbow crosswalk as anyone else. And after we emailed our letter urging the city to follow up on our petition, the city responded that we cannot install this crosswalk because it violates Caltrans guidelines. And after we pointed out that there have been plenty of other rainbow crosswalks built already, you told us that they took the risk, but we are not willing to. The risk is minuscule, and I found this to be contradictory to the usual stance our city takes. Last year, I saw our city doing everything to prevent Velco development in direct opposition to state law, and we did that citing our commitment to local control. I'm not here to talk about that project nor my opinion on how that went down. I just want to say that I think there is something good and noble inherent in that idea of local control, that our city should always prioritize promoting the welfare of our people over outside pressure. But somehow, when we, the youth and the supporters of the LGBTQ+ movement told you, the city, that we want a rainbow crosswalk to be built near our school, you declared defeat at the most remote possibility of being liable for a lawsuit, when there is no historical or scientific evidence anywhere that installing a rainbow crosswalk could get us sued. I'm getting suspicious that there's some sort of miscommunication here, that when I think about local control, I think of control by the workers and students who composes our community. And when you say local control, you really meant control by the specific group of older, well-off property owner retirees of Cupertino, with everyone else excluded. The high schoolers in our areas are expected to just go away after high school, make sure to not end up in our community college, and then don't ever come back and try to make a family here, because there's just no way we are able to afford a place to stay. It's ridiculous that this is normalized. It's ridiculous that when we gather more than 500 people to finally voice one of our demands for a rainbow crosswalk, we're told to forget about it after the teeniest obstacle, because I guess that's just how little we the youth matter to the city. When people equate our call for a symbol of LGBTQ+ inclusivity near Cupertino High School with just painting symbols of political parties, it's proof that the real problems we voice out are not treated seriously. Cupertino belongs to the youth and the LGBTQ plus community just as much as it belongs to everyone else around Cupertino. The city demonstrating support towards the greatly marginalized LGBTQ plus youth of Cupertino isn't the same as pandering to any random political interest, and our concerns should not be trivialized. I hope Cupertino can truly commit to listening to its people. Thank you.
Okay, next is Shmili Lin. Welcome.
Good evening. Is my microphone working?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I am a newly minted alumnus of Cupertino High School, and I will also be speaking today on behalf of Kayla and in support of the Rainbow Crosswalk petition. Growing up in California, and Silicon Valley in particular, I am privileged to be openly accepted as someone who is gay. And while I have certainly had my own struggles with my identity, I have really struggled for others to accept what my identity may be. Unfortunately, that acceptance tends to straddle a generational line. Though I can expect my fellow students and peers to not bat an eye at the diversity of orientation and identity today, the same is not particularly true for older generations, of whom mostly did not grow up with the same standards of inclusion and of which this council is mostly made up of. My support for Rainbow Crosswalk stems not only from it being a symbol of inclusion, but also as a symbol of support, and specifically support from the older generation. It is an acknowledgement from our elected leaders and representatives that our lives and our struggles exist, and that we are a part of the greater community. Despite whatever regulations you may cite, this response feels at most half-hearted when we consider the multitude of other cities, San Francisco, San Jose, Oakland, Long Beach, Los Angeles, and countless others, which have already installed non-standard crosswalks. It is well known that many of those government regulations are outdated, and to this day, there has not been a conclusive study on the effect of non-standard crosswalks on traffic safety. While a convenient excuse to not challenge these feeble regulations is an acknowledgement of this council's unwillingness to fight for its LGBTQ plus citizens. I know how it feels to be perceived as different. I know how it feels to live in guilt and fear that I'll never be normal, that I was born wrong. As someone who had struggled with coming out for many years, a symbol such as a rainbow crosswalk would mean a lot to me, and a lot to many other LGBTQ plus youth who have likely been in that same position of constant anxiety and uncertainty. It's a message which reads that I am just as accepted and just as loved as any other person should be. It is also important to me that this message would be placed near a school, representative of today's youth and tomorrow's leaders. Now, more than ever, when LGBTQ plus youth are at high risk for depression and other mental health issues, and when the suicide rates are disproportionately higher than our non-LGBTQ plus peers, it is important for these affirmations to come from people poised to make real lasting change. It's a sign that they hear us too. I firmly believe in the ability for us to come together in, quite literally, paving the road to inclusion for all. Thank you.
Oh, hello, is my mic working? Hello?
It's working.
Right, go ahead.
All right. Okay, so I'm speaking as a member of KALA today, also a recent high school graduate from Cupertino High School, also in support of Rainbow Crosswalk. So, in my opinion, the city's been given a great opportunity here to show support for the LGBTQ plus youth population in Cupertino. 500 people from across Cupertino, and especially from within our high schools, signed this petition in direct support for this project. It just makes no sense to me, as a citizen, why the city of Cupertino wouldn't take this opportunity to demonstrate solidarity when there's already this much public support for it. As I see it, the Rainbow Crosswalk is something from the youth for the youth, and the city of Cupertino will be missing out on something huge by denying this chance to give the students in Cupertino a voice in the city that they live and study in. And that's a voice that's heard often too little, too late in the city, with students being priced out once they reach adulthood. Once we leave, often our voices are gone for good. So I see the Rainbow Crosswalk as something paramount, a permanent message of acceptance for a vulnerable population at a time in their lives when they need it the most. In my opinion, that's not something that stopped by erroneous claims of traffic regulation violations. That's not something you give up on halfway through, because what it means for the people that it's meant for in the city is 10 times more than any amount of effort we could put into getting it done. I'm stunned by the lack of leadership on this project by the city. And yeah, thank you, that's all.
Okay, next is Ram Shripathi, welcome.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, we can hear you. Ram, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, great. Hey, City Council, good evening. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to address a major concern. I got a letter recently from the city saying that they're going to build a pedestrian lane on Mcclellan Road all the way down to Blaney.
Oh, excuse me. This is an agenda item later on, is it not, Kirsten?
It is.
Right, so you need to talk when it's the agenda item. This is only for items not on the agenda.
Oh, all right, okay, then I'll just...
Right, so yeah, monitor the meeting, and when we get to that agenda item is the time to talk.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to Jennifer Green. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good evening. My name is Jennifer Green. I am a resident here at Cupertino, and I have younger children in the Cupertino School District, as well as an older child who graduated high school from the local schools. I would like to voice my support of the Rainbow Crosswalk here in Cupertino. And yes, I have a child, my oldest, who came out some years ago as non-binary trans. That was not an easy thing for her to do, as she did not know how she would be accepted. And it was not an easy thing for us as parents, as we did not know how she would be accepted in our local community. As parents, we hope for the best, and we love Cupertino, but we just weren't sure, and anything less than 100% assurance leads a parent to worry for their child. Things went well for us, but I would like to point out that this Rainbow Crosswalk would be a little bit more assurance to all parents in our community, a little shoulder squeeze, that Cupertino is a community that welcomes all, no matter their sexual orientation or gender identity. It is a quite visible declaration to all who live here and who work here and who visit here that Cupertino recognizes all under that rainbow as valid and welcome. And that's the Cupertino I would like to live in. I ask you all to do all that you can to have the Rainbow Crosswalk installed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Neil Mcclintock. Welcome, Neil.
Hi, I had a visual that I sent in to the clerk. Is it possible to pull that up? Just the picture. You don't need to send look at the email. Cool, that's good enough. Hi, my name's Neil. I think you all know me by now. This is me and my boyfriend. It was taken several months ago at Silicon Valley Pride. There were a bunch of young people there, but turnout still wasn't that great. And to be honest, it's part of a broader issue in our community. In the South Bay, we have very little LGBT representation and inclusion. It's very hard to find, for example, a gay bar. There are probably a handful in the entire region as compared to the East Bay or SF. This is personal to me. I went to Cupertino High. I never came out while I was in high school. And it was one of the reasons that I spent most of my time in K through 12 being very depressed. I felt really uncomfortable. All of my friends were straight men. And, you know, they would constantly throw around the word faggot all the time while I was there. And I didn't feel comfortable talking about it, even though it really hurt me. I didn't come out until I was in college. But this is a really easy way to help out kids like me who are going through a hard time. And it sends a message that we care, frankly. I gotta say, this city has not done a great job of making people like me feel good. Just a couple years ago, there was a big push against LGBT same-sex ed, LGBT sex ed. And I know a lot of people will say that wasn't homophobic, but the fact that you're not willing to talk about other forms of sex when those are the only forms of sex that are relevant to people like me is homophobic. It is. You're basically invalidating our existence. And if you're okay with sex ed, but you're not okay with that kind of sex ed, Ask yourself why that is, please. We need to do a lot better, and I understand that there are some regulations that are concerned. I don't need to make the point that other cities have done this, but the risk is very minimal. I mean, that traffic only really goes one way because going from Finch to Main Street, you can only turn left. And also there are red lights, and there are also usually crossing guards as well. Frankly, I think it's pretty lazy to just sort of discount it. And to me, it's part of a broader issue with leadership in the city of Cupertino. We're always looking for problems rather than solutions. We're always thinking about what is the next thing that scares us? What is the next thing that is coming to get Cupertino? Rather than how can we all help each other out and just make each other feel better? This is one of those ways. So I hope you take it seriously and you look for solutions and not just reasons you can't do this. Thank you.
Okay, next, hold on, back to participants. 1 second. Next is J.R. Fruin. Welcome, J.R.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf, members of the City Council. I heard some of the comments earlier, and I just wanted to weigh in here. There were some comments that Roger Lee made with regard to the Mutcd guidelines, and I would encourage everybody to really go back and look at those in greater detail, because the guidelines regulate the crosswalk itself as a traffic control device. The manual at section 3G does not consider non-retroreflective aesthetic pavement treatments to be part of the crosswalk. And all that the Mutcd and its interpretive rulings appear to require is that the colors not impinge on the purpose of the crosswalk striping. That means that the colors should be muted in tone so as not to communicate a traffic control purpose, that any pattern be regular and uniform, and that such treatments should not degrade the contrast of the white or yellow striping to marking the crosswalk itself. A rainbow is a readily recognizable pattern, so its regularity and uniformity shouldn't be a question. Providing sufficient blank asphalt between the colored pavement and the striping, together with the muted tones themselves, should resolve contrast concerns under the one real official ruling that you need to look at, which is 3-09-24I of 2013. Right now, I think another commenter noted already that there are in fact 2 such muted tone crosswalks in the city already over Stevens Creek Boulevard, one near Bug Road and one right in front of the post office. Both are red, both run their color treatment from limit line to limit line. And while I'm no materials scientist, both appear to be made of a retroreflective material, yet neither Caltrans nor the federal government has apparently asked for them to be removed. So, to the extent that you don't simply want to follow the example of numerous other cities that have decorative crosswalks, this is one option that you could follow. The other is one that could actually strike a blow for inclusion countrywide and for decorative crosswalks of all sorts everywhere. And that is simply to look into obtaining experimental authority from the Federal Highway Administration to incorporate a rainbow pattern for this crosswalk. And you could look to the examples that have been set elsewhere for how these could be installed and what materials would be used. This option exists under current law, and if you're successful, it would, not to repeat a terrible pun, pave the way for more innovative streetscape beautification projects all across the country. As far as litigation exposure is concerned, you can follow West Hollywood's example. You would work directly with a state engineer, obtain plan review, ensure a determination of reasonableness so that the city can maintain design immunity under Government Code Section 830.6 and the test described in Cornett versus the Department of Transportation. As long as cars and pedestrians ply our streets, they will never be collision free, but you have an actual chance to improve safety at this particular intersection. And I hope you do. And as somebody who grew up and went to our schools, if this sort of rainbow crosswalk had existed in my time, it would have been enormously reassuring as a gay kid growing up at Lynbrook. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Roger, can you look into all the things that JR mentioned?
I can. I had emailed Mr. Fruin a time or two, and I would have been happy to have received that information, and I will follow up with that.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Next is Kitty Moore.
Might I just also ask?
Sure.
I mean, if it would seem to me like our exposure, if there's a precedent set by local cities, that would also be very relevant to our discussion, it would seem to me, right? Because I thought I heard that other cities have done this.
We could add this as a future agenda item.
Thank you.
Agenda. I think it's a complicated issue. I find there is a New York Times article. There are a lot of different options. People have done it, people haven't done it. It's complicated.
Okay, so, yeah, we can add this as an agenda item. That's probably the best thing. I have to clarify,
this kind of thing, we just received, for me, I first heard about it today, but then the email was last week. This thing takes time, and then yes, it's precedent setting, so the staff is not, Roger is a public works director, so he follows rules. That doesn't mean he doesn't want.
Okay, yeah, we'll put this on an agenda.
And agendize it, figure out how we do it properly.
Okay.
So be patient, because it takes time for things to do it the best way, right? And I'm sure that the mayor and the staff all want to work with you, because we as a city, we did the rainbow flag racing. And
okay, Leon, thank you. Thank you. This is not an agenda item now, so let's move on. Kitty.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Scharf, Vice Mayor Paul, and council members Chow, Sinks, and Willie. And I am a little concerned about this discussion because it is not an agenda item. From a policy point, it sounds like there's an issue with the crosswalk being within 1,000 feet of a school. And I would like to have it clarified because we have budgetary issues with the pandemic. And I realize that there are multiple asks in the community, including working with the growing homeless camp that we have at Wolf, and I respect the City Council to wisely prioritize the needs of the community. And I'm wondering if Council would consider studying what impacts, what benefits to society, costs, and maintenance the Rainbow Crosswalk would have, and whether or not the intersection of De Anza and Stevens Creek Boulevard might be a better location, and perhaps CALA would have or be able to point to resources which would be able to commit funding or have some kind of partnership concept. And while the idea of the crosswalk is to be inclusive, I'm concerned that one school would be exclusively regarded to have this crosswalk, and it seems as though having it in a more central location, should City Council want it, at Stevens Creek Boulevard and De Anza might be better. This has been done, for instance, in Houston, and I've seen it both parallel and perpendicular to the roadway. I look forward to seeing this item weighed in light of the public interest and also in consideration of the budgetary constraints that we have, and perhaps this can be deliberated on for the work program in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kitty. And last person is Catherine Stakey. Welcome. Yeah, there we go. Kath, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, I'm also speaking to express my support for Kayla and for the Rainbow Crosswalk petition. I grew up in Cupertino and graduated from Cupertino High School in 2009. I think that a Rainbow Crosswalk would be an important symbol of inclusion and acceptance for the LGBTQ plus youth in Cupertino, and I believe that symbolic acts like these are literally the least we can do. And yeah, thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Next, Patrick Ahrens.
Hi, Mayor Scharf. Thank you so much. Hello, council members. My name is Patrick Ahrens. I'm a Cupertino resident, and I just wanted to express my support for looking into the Rainbow Crosswalk. I really want to appreciate all of the comments here tonight, especially from Neil. I thought his was really powerful, and for the council to certainly study this issue further. I know that at De Anza, we've also experienced issues with inclusivity with our LGBTQ plus community, and would love to partner and show support for more inclusive environments such as this Rainbow Crosswalk. I know that San Jose, other parts of the Bay Area have done this without a huge amount of friction. So I would love to see the council move in a positive direction on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. I did see one person had raised their hand a second time, but you only get one chance in oral.
Mr. Mayor, I do have 3 emails to read.
Okay, well, yeah, go ahead.
First one is from Chaco Lee. I am speaking today on behalf of Kayla, the Cupertino Association of Youth LGBTQ+ advocates, in support of the Rainbow Crosswalk petition. I am Coca, and I am a recent graduate of Cupertino High School. The city of Cupertino has stalled the Rainbow Crosswalk project for too long against the wishes of its residents, citing regulations and liability in the project. The mayor has cited legal concerns over installing a rainbow crosswalk despite the well-documented number of crosswalks across the bay and Cupertino's own red crosswalks near City Hall that are neither white, gray, nor yellow. Cupertino has a legacy, and being anti-LGBTQ, there is a no-brainer that attempts to shine a light on being more inclusive. To stall any further shows a profound lack of allyship from Cupertino. A rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of Stevens Creek Boulevard and Main Street within 1,000 feet of Cupertino High School is an important symbol of inclusion and acceptance for the vulnerable LGBTQ+ youth population in our city, and it should not be delayed any further. I am remembering the coding camp that I attended the summer of my junior year. Given many options for our group project, one of them was a website that lists places that LGBTQ+ people can visit without being harassed. Being an LGBTQ+ myself, I was so excited that I told my parents about it. What I thought you were straight. When I heard that, I felt like I didn't matter. After that event, I stayed quiet and pretended to be someone that I am not. Not only did that event wound me, but other small instances hurt my feelings. I would mentally cringe when someone calls me by the wrong pronouns, or when someone says something wrong based on the gender that I display. Not only misgendering a person is disrespecting them, but you are also telling their true gender identity doesn't matter. Keeping quiet about my true gender identity hurts, but I did this since I don't know if people will accept me as I am or reject me. I did come out, and I was happy people did accept me. If the city of Cupertino built the Rainbow Crosswalk, that would be a comforting message that not only me, but LGBTQ+ people are welcome here. Sincerely, Coca. The next email is from Alex F. Dear City of Cupertino, I am speaking today on behalf of Kayla, the Cupertino Association of Youth LGBTQ+ advocates, in support of the Rainbow Crosswalk petition. My name is Xander. I live in Cupertino, and I currently go to Cupertino High School. The city of Cupertino has stalled the Rainbow Crosswalk project for way too long against the wishes of its residents. The mayor has cited legal concerns over installing a rainbow crosswalk despite the well-documented number of crosswalks across the bay and Cupertino's own red crosswalks near City Hall that are neither white, gray, nor yellow. Despite many residents of Cupertino trying to prove how they are inclusive and woke, Cupertino still has a legacy of being anti-LGBTQ and pretending to be more inclusive. Stalling this project any further will show a lack of allyship from Cupertino. A rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of Stevens Creek Boulevard and Main Street within 1,000 feet of Cupertino High School is an important symbol of inclusion and acceptance for the vulnerable LGBTQ+ youth population in our city, and it should not be delayed any further. Sincerely, Xander. And the next one is from Draven Valcourt. Dear City of Cupertino, I am writing today on behalf of Kayla, the Cupertino Association of Youth LGBTQ+ advocates in support of the Rainbow Crosswalk petition. I'd like to remain anonymous for privacy and use the name Draven Valcourt, but I am a student and resident of Cupertino. The City of Cupertino has stalled the Rainbow Crosswalk project for too long and against the wishes of its residents, citing regulations and liabilities in an effort to undermine the project. The mayor has cited legal concerns over installing a rainbow crosswalk despite the well-documented number of crosswalks across the bay and Cupertino's own red crosswalks near City Hall that are neither white, gray, nor yellow. Cupertino has a legacy of being anti-LGBTQ. This is a no-brainer that attempts to shine a light on being more inclusive. To stall any further shows a profound lack of allyship from Cupertino. A rainbow crosswalk at the intersection of Stevens Creek Boulevard and Main Street within 1,000 feet of Cupertino High School is an important symbol of inclusion and acceptance for the vulnerable LGBTQ plus youth population in our city, and it should not be delayed any further. In times like these, where there's much need for equal representation in society, now would be an optimal time to begin the Rainbow Crosswalk project. As we have seen in the BLM movement, suppressed and ignored societies need more representation in modern day. A rainbow crosswalk would be ideal for the LGBTQ plus community representation because A, it would spread awareness, B, it represents LGBTQ plus, C, it would make Cupertino a more welcoming town. If we show our support to suppressed groups, people will become more accepting and educated towards them, making our town a much more wholesome and welcoming environment. Please consider starting the rainbow crosswalk. Sincerely, Draven Valcourt. And that is all, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. So that ends oral communications.
Can I still ask staff for more clarification because the city is being attacked due to misinformation. And this item has not been on the council agenda. I received the first email on the 13th of July. So how come we are being accused of stalling a project that never even is on the agenda or in the work program? Could the staff clarify? When did the staff know about it?
I can't clarify. We provided, I even took pictures of some examples that I saw that would be a little more compliant with some of the transportation rules. Sent that to Public Works. They provided an estimate. We sent it to individuals, and that's where I lost track.
When was that?
That was probably, I could hunt in my emails, but it's a while ago, and I can certainly.
No one has sent, none of the attendees today has sent even one email to the council. We got so many emails on defund police, but we didn't get even one email until the 13th, just one now, so far, on Rainbow Crosswalk. So I'm very puzzled. How are we stalling a project that never even reach the council?
I think everybody's entitled to their impressions. We can certainly, when you.
So I want to clarify to the public, the city didn't receive enough information to proceed. So if you have reached out to the city, the 13th the letter says it's a follow-up to a petition, but I couldn't find any earlier letter with that petition. So apparently there is some miscommunication. Someone is using this for maybe a personal campaign gain. I set my son down for a talk to make sure that he knows whatever his gender, his orientation, I will love him no matter what. I make sure that because I want to be sure that he knows he'll feel comfortable whatever he decides. And I think a lot of the parents are like that. So please don't assume that we somehow are against anything.
Okay.
Most of us care about our kids.
And we will, I certainly am willing to put this on the agenda for a future meeting. And yeah, you are right. This was brought up by JR a while ago. And then the petition came, more recently. But we were looking into it, long before that petition arrived. But we really shouldn't discuss it anymore.
Yeah.
Put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay. We are on to the city manager update on COVID-19 response efforts.
Okay, let's see here. So Santa Clara County is back on the watch list due to the increase of COVID cases per 100,000 residents. It surpassed the threshold, so that's how we got back on the watch list. What's getting a little confusing is certain types of businesses were able to open on the 13th, but then had to close back down on the 15th. And it's becoming particularly difficult for businesses who are going through the cost of preparing to get ready to open and then they can't. So there's that. The other added wrinkle that I think I mentioned last time was the state and the county now have more restrictive orders in different places in their orders. So the cities are left up to looking at what's the most restrictive and having to follow that, so that every time there's a change, we have to kind of sift through both sets of orders. So it's getting a little less orderly. In Cupertino, however, we are now at 59 cases via the dashboard this morning. July 24th is the first by appointment testing event at the senior center. Scheduling has already reached a 600 people capacity, so there's certainly a demand for the testing. Follow-on dates for testing are August 5th and 9th and September 2nd and 16th. Doesn't mean that's the end, it just means that there's nothing scheduled after September at this point. We've been also working with the Red Cross for blood donation in the city. So this will take place on September 15th at Community Hall. It'll of course meet all the social distancing and face covering requirements as ordered by the shelter in place. There are 50 spots for the blood donation. And the incentive is that there is antibody testing that has been emergency authorized by the FDA. So that's gonna spool up here in a little while. The city was required to submit paperwork to get paid back potentially for any COVID-related expenses via the CARES Act. And the good news is we're getting $735,000 to cover some of our costs. Not to get confused, it's not meant to cover any lost revenues. It's meant to cover expenses due to COVID. However, it does have some strings on what it can be spent on and when it can be spent. So staff will be coming back to council with recommendations on that in a little bit. The requirement to spend is by December 2020, or I'm sorry, but the end of December 2020. The small business grant program that council has put into place kicked off with an application period starting July 17th and will close on July 23rd, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we've already received 14 applications, so I think it's going to be well utilized. As a reminder, these are the grant opportunities for small business. Law enforcement is seeing an interesting increase in calls for violating the shelter in place. Recent events have been 40 people playing basketball at Collins Elementary, 30 people playing soccer at Creekside Park, 20 people playing cricket at Library Field Park, I'm calling it a park, with no face coverings. So this is why we're getting community spread, because people are, I think, going a little stir crazy, but they are becoming a little more careless or cavalier, however you want to look at it, in terms of these large gatherings. As a reminder, there are gatherings allowed outdoors, but it's less than 25 with social distancing, no contact sports. So that's kind of what law enforcement is looking at right now. Changes to the health order are becoming less and less frequent. So the COVID-19 update that the city publishes will now move from 2 times a week to 1 time a week. If we start getting more changes, we'll publish more often. Parks and Recreation, as a reminder, we have another group of camps for next week that are starting. There's 149 spots. Unfortunately, it's only at approximately 60% capacity compared with the number of registrants. Not a surprise, we have 664 registered for college courses or college prep courses in the city. And we have about 424 participants in our online classes, both for the free classes and the paid classes. So that's going pretty well. In the past, as recently as last week, the Chamber had been supporting senior meals through through fundraising, and then some through their supporting restaurants, local restaurants in the process. The city is going to take that over for a bit. I can't say for how long, but we started Monday and we were able to take some of the meal costs and cut it almost more than in half. So we're getting a little bit more efficient. as we put together a small contract with a local catering function that will help support the most vulnerable seniors who can't really go out and go grocery shopping and such. They very much appreciated it. In other news, during the SIP, we are approaching, more good news, PS season. So some good news about that as we prepare to respond to it. Maps of the affected areas are a lot more precise than last year, so we're going to be able to communicate with residents a little bit better. The city will be able to see the region versus just the city. Notifications to the affected residents will be more immediate. And so all of these things will help the city communicate to the residents better, and we'll be, having a website just like we always have, and being able to figure out how to communicate all of the material that's necessary. And one last tidbit is we're working with the Registrar of Voters for a physical polling place at Quinlan for this fall. And that's the end of my report.
One question.
Sure.
Has PG&E disclosed the topology of their network to us? In other words, how they've chosen to segment the city with their new protective devices? Does the city at least have that information, or is this still a big secret?
I don't know that. I can certainly ask for a little more detail. I didn't have time to ask many questions about what kind of information how they were providing the information to us, or at what depth of detail.
Yeah, my understanding is they put in these protective devices so that they can be finer grained, but I think it would be, if they're not willing to disclose to the public, at least it would be helpful to the city to know, right? If we get reports in a certain area that power's out, then we could probably make a fair assumption that everybody on that branch up to the device is also offline. So I think it'd be useful. What we did this last year was insane, right? We have employees trying to survey whole neighborhoods because we got no information from PG&E. So I would hope that they would at least disclose to the city what the current and new topology is. Thank you.
Okay, Deb, I had a couple of, so regarding testing, I know Walgreens in Cupertino is doing non-appointment testing.
Yes.
I went there yesterday. They had a sign up. They had run out of test kits. They would have more the next day, which is today. I didn't try again. Long line of cars wrapped around the building twice. And Santa Clara County also has a bunch of, I think, 3 test sites with no appointment and no qualifications necessary. What I have seen is a little bit of misinformation on Nextdoor. So the state issued guidelines on testing, which kind of implied that you couldn't get tested unless you were, an essential worker or you had symptoms. It's not quite like that. What their guidelines are more doing is the turnaround time for test results is going to be longer if you're asymptomatic than if you're an essential worker or symptomatic. But you should still get tested. It may take a little longer. It may be less relevant, since by the time you get your results, you probably know if you have it or not. But if you're asymptomatic, you wouldn't know. So I would still encourage everyone to take advantage of the free testing.
Yeah, so just a thing about July 24th by appointment. It's a new process they're trying because of all the long lines they've seen. Like the long lines at Creekside when we had our 3 days of testing in June. And so it'll be an interesting way to try and manage this kind of event, just to see if it's more efficient. That's all they're trying to do, is get more efficient. People are able to check in faster. They're able to pre-print some labels for the tests. And so it should go faster. So we'll just see. It's definitely a pilot, which is why this is, I don't know if it's the only one in the county, but it is definitely one of the first in the county to try by appointments rather than just get in line and we'll wait until, the tests run out or we max out the capacity for the day. So we're at 600 though, so that's still indicates to me there's quite a big demand.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, we can move on. to report on committee assignments. Who would like, Rod, why don't you go?
Yeah, thank you. The Highway 85 Policy Advisory Board met again to see if we could clarify things. We had a bunch of public speakers, all helpful, all asking for dedicated transit lanes in the corridor with limited stations, so that is helping our cause. And I think we've reached consensus on what's called 3-2. I think whether or not they're dedicated 24/7 lanes is still open for debate, as are our stations. And then Darcy and I were on a call with Chappie Jones yesterday with regard to the Stevens Creek corridor, and I will let him report on that.
All right, very good. Darcy, why don't you go?
Okay, I guess that segues pretty nicely into me. I apologize for not having my video. I'm getting a choppy connection, so in an effort to help alleviate that, I've turned off the video. So technically it's not a committee assignment, but we do have a group between San Jose, Santa Clara, Cupertino, and the county that meets on a semi-regular basis to discuss the Stevens Creek Boulevard potential transit corridor. And so you may recall that last year we put forward a resolution upon request of this group. It's spearheaded by Vice Mayor Jones in San Jose. And what the ask was last year was that each of the cities of Santa Clara, San Jose, and Cupertino come up with a resolution indicating some type of appetite for at least examining the possibility of transit down Stevens Creek Boulevard. And for Cupertino's part, we were very adamant about the idea of this being grade separated, meaning that it does not impact traffic at street level, which is to say that it would either be elevated or below ground. And we also were adamant about the fact that we incorporate into our resolution that 280 would be examined as an alternate corridor. So as these things go, we had a meeting on Monday. Councilmember Singh's called in, appreciate that. Our Director of Public Works, Roger Lee, was on the call as well. And there was a discussion between those agencies as well as VTA with regard to how we proceed. And I would say, without giving too detailed of an update, as I believe that this will be coming back on our agenda, but I believe it's fair to say that our local Valley Transit Agency is really more focused upon Stevens Creek Boulevard and what we would think of as more traditional modes of transit, such as BRT, or possibly light rail, or something they call heavy rail. But essentially, as a condition to be part of this conversation, a while back, we made it a requirement from the Cupertino perspective that we look at really innovative modern transit. And so to San Jose's credit, they did initiate an RFI asking private agencies from all over the world to submit proposals for precisely that down Stevens Creek Boulevard, essentially connecting where 85 intersects with Stevens Creek Boulevard in Cupertino, all the way down to Dearborn Station, and then also connecting Dearborn Station to the airport. So from there, one can really imagine, if you're really talking about transformative types of modern transit, if you get there in a really competitively quick manner, faster than any car could go, for instance, then that could really be a linchpin to thinking about real transit solutions, not just for years or decades, but even generations. That is a very difficult conversation to have. Because we're talking about our local transit agency without casting aspersions, but it's fair to say that generationally they haven't really been pushing the envelope technologically. And so I think at this point we're really at a bit of a tipping point in the conversation. And so when you look at the 85 PAB corridor conversation that Councilmember Singh represents us on for the Policy Advisory Board there, and you also look at this conversation that's going on, I think it's one of those synergies that we should really push for to make sure that not only do we have a voice in the conversation, but we could potentially impact for the very significantly better, efficaciousness of transit in this area and beyond, the happenings that occur, not just in the coming years, but systemically, on a essentially permanent basis going forward. So that's where we are in the conversation. This is going to come back to us in the form of an ask from the city of Cupertino. There was a few recommendations that VTA had put together with regard to what a study would look like. And the most expensive basically had Cupertino putting in more than $1 million for essentially a 5 to 10%, design. We basically rejected that out of hand. The other two were much more modest. Our contributions were more along the lines of $80,000, $90,000. And those are essentially sketches with regard to several points along the way, what that would look like. And so the conversation is evolving. Nothing is set in stone at this point. And I think it's safe to say that we do have veto power over this at this point, because nothing has been decided. Everything is advisory to our councils. So we should expect this to come our way sometime within the next several months. So that's my update. Thanks much.
Okay, thank you, Darcy. Let's see what happened to my here. I'll just quickly say I don't have anything. Cities Association did not meet. I guess it's our summer break, and that's the only thing I would report on. Next on to Councilmember Chow.
I don't have anything, I think.
Great. Okay, how about Councilmember Willie? You're muted.
Yes. Being the alternate still on Route 85, I also attended that on the 13th. Let's hope that we do make some progress on this going forward. So that's it for.
Okay. Thank you. Then we are on to the consent calendar. I had a request from someone to pull, which item was that? Let's see.
Number 13.
Pull item number 13 and
time it with item number 23.
Right, yeah, item 23 is related to item 13. So we'll hear that together. I mean, why don't we move item 23 back up to before item 16 if nobody opposes that. Can we have a vote to move item 23 immediately after consent?
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Sinks?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Mayor Sharp?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so other than that, is there anybody that wanted to pull anything from consent other than that item 13?
I will move items 4 through 15, excluding 13 if there's no objection.
Okay, I will second.
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Sinks?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Mayor Sharp?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we're on to item 13. This is the award of construction contract for the Mcclellan Road Separated Bikeways Phase 2 project for the construction of separated bike lanes on Mcclellan Road between South Stelling Road and De Anza Boulevard, and on Pacifica Drive between De Anza Boulevard and Torrey. So this is, that's the money for that. 23 is to prohibit parking along McClellan between Stelling and De Anza, and along Pacifica between De Anza and Torrey. So why don't we do number 23 first before we get on to number 13. If we can have a staff report on this, on 23.
Yes.
I'll start here. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Thank you for listening to me tonight, and I have a short presentation that I'll be giving to you about item number 23, and I'll ask Roger if he's available to share his screen. He will be controlling the PowerPoint that I prepared for you this evening.
Okay, and before you start, I just want to say for members of the public, you'll have the opportunity to speak after the presentation and the initial council questions, so then you can raise your hand for that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, do we have Roger on?
So he lost his connection, so he's trying to reconnect. You may want to just start talking or tap dancing or something.
I will not be tap dancing.
Pardon me.
Roger.
My computer completely died. If we're up to that item, let me share my screen. I apologize. Everyone seeing that?
Great.
This is item 23, right? Okay, great. Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Roger. So good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So I'll be speaking to you this evening about phase 2 of the Mcclellan separated bike lane project, and specifically the need to prohibit parking to allow for implementation of that project. Next slide, Roger. Our recommendation tonight is for council to conduct the first reading of ordinance number 20-2210, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino, amending table 11.24.150 of the Cupertino Municipal Code relating to prohibition of parking along certain streets, specifically along Mcclellan Road between Stelling and De Anza Boulevard and along Pacifica Drive between De Anza and Torrey Avenue. Next slide. The Mcclellan Road separated bike lane project, phase 2 of which will be before you tonight for consideration of award of the construction contract, will install separated bike lanes along both sides of Mcclellan between Stelling and De Anza and both sides of Pacifica between De Anza and Torrey. Currently, on-street parking is allowed along most of these two segments. However, in order to accommodate the separated bike lanes and increase the safety for bicyclists, parking must be prohibited. Next slide. So here's a map that shows the extent of the current separated bike lane project and the proposed parking removal, which is indicated in red. Phase 1 of the Mcclellan separated bike lane project, which was just completed, extends to Monte Vista High School to the west. This project was ranked number 2 in the 2016 bike plan. I'd like to add also that staff has been successful in inquiring right away from the properties at the northwest and the southeast corners of the De Anza intersection to facilitate phases 2 and 4 of the Mcclellan separated bike lane project, and also that we received over $2 million from Apple and $1 million in federal grant money for these phases. Next slide. For outreach, staff conducted 2 mailings to all residents and property owners along these 2 segments, one on June 10th and another on June 29th. The mailings described the project and the need for removal of parking. To date, we've received 2 responses, both of them in opposition to the removal of the parking. The primary reasons stated for opposing the parking removal were the inconvenience to residents and the potential for difficulty in backing out of driveways. Next slide. In response to these concerns, I'll note first that the removal of parking will not make backing out of the driveways more difficult or less safe, and in fact will likely make the maneuver easier. I'll have some pictures to share that illustrates this in a moment. I would also note that the prohibition of parking along residential collector streets in order to accommodate bike lanes is not unusual in Cupertino or elsewhere. For example, Mcclellan Road, Stelling Road, and Bubb Road are all residential collector streets that have had parking removed at some point in the past in order to accommodate bike lanes. And the next slide will show some photos of those roads. So it's shown in the photos, Bubb Road south of McClellan, Stelling between Stevens Creek and I-280, and McClellan west of Stelling are all residential collector streets, as I've indicated, that don't have parking in order to accommodate bike lanes. Staff has not received any complaints or concerns from residents living along these streets about any inconveniences related to the bike lanes or the lack of on-street parking. Next slide. Getting back to the concern regarding backing out of driveways, here are two photos showing a driver's eye view looking towards oncoming traffic from driveways that are within phase 1 of the McClellan project that was recently completed. As you can see, there's a clear view of the roadway. In fact, the current project will likely result in a reduction in the speed of approaching traffic due to the effective narrowing of the vehicle lanes, making backing out, in fact, safer. This will be especially noticeable along McClellan since there's very little utilization of the on-street parking, effectively resulting in 20-foot wide lanes that are very conducive to speeding. The current project will narrow those lanes to about 11 feet. Next slide. Speaking of parking utilization, staff conducted numerous site visits to determine the utilization rate of the on-street parking. These two photos were both taken around 11 p.m., one on Monday, July 13th, and the other on Friday, July 17th, looking down the McClellan corridor between Stelling and De Anza. This is a time when you would expect people to be home and the utilization of on-street parking to be the highest. As you can see in those photos, hopefully you can see it's a little dark, but as you can see, there are 0 parked vehicles along either side of McClellan on either of those 2 days. Next slide. Here's a photo that was taken during the day around noon on Monday, July 20th, yesterday. Similarly, there are no parked vehicles. And I'd like to add that the photos that I'm showing you are not cherry-picked. These are the typical situation each time I visited the site. I will note that along Pacifica between De Anza and Torrey, the utilization of on-street parking was higher with about 6 to 8 parked vehicles observed during my visits. However, along that segment, there are no single-family homes, and there are a multitude of off-street and nearby parking options available for property owners and visitors. Next slide. So in conclusion, staff recommends tonight the council conduct the first reading of ordinance 20-2210, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino, amending table 11.24.150 of the Cupertino Municipal Code relating to prohibition of parking along certain streets. And that concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, so we will do questions from council, only questions, and then we will go to public comment. So who would like to go first? Rod.
So I'll just very quickly ask you to amplify just a bit on how conditions get safer when we install bike lanes. Can you just repeat that again and maybe give it a little color?
Sure. So
and how do we know this, right? Thank you.
Yeah. So generally, and this has been found to occur, nationwide in all sorts of settings, that wider lanes are conducive to higher speeds. And in fact, the California Caltrans has recognized that fact through generations of revisions of their manual of uniform traffic control devices. They used to very much be in favor of only 12-foot lanes on state highways, and over time, as they've realized that those wide lanes are just conducive to higher speeds, they've gradually accommodated, allowed, and even encouraged for narrower 11 or 10-foot lanes, depending on the context of the street. The reason being is people drive down a narrow lane, it feels a little bit more constrained, and they basically will drive slower as a result. So currently on McClellan, between De Anza and Stelling, it's a 40-foot wide street, so 20 feet each direction. And as I've shown, the parking utilization rate is very low. So you essentially have a 20-foot driving lane, which is very wide and very conducive to cars going fast. Through implementation of this project, the lanes, with the installation of the bike lanes and the installation of the concrete buffer islands that's going to separate the bike lanes from the vehicle lanes, those lanes will be reduced to about 11 feet wide. which is a much more context-sensitive width of lane for a residential collector street and will result in slowing down of traffic.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So, yeah, I've looked at Google Earth multiple times, and each time I don't see any cars parked on the street. But what I do see are UPS delivery vehicles, another service vehicle, a pickup truck, which is probably providing services. So there's that issue about where those vehicles park. And also, besides deliveries, what about things like garbage pickup? Do they just block the road while they're picking up the garbage, or how does that work?
Yeah, the garbage trucks will just block the road as they pick up the garbage, which is typically what happens currently on many similar streets around Cupertino and elsewhere. So that's not an unusual condition, and it seems to work out everywhere else that we have that condition. As for delivery vehicles and such, they have a couple of options. Currently on streets with bike lanes, they will just park in the bike lane, blocking the bike lane and half blocking the traffic lane, which is an unsafe condition as it is. With the raised concrete barriers between the bike lane and the vehicle lane that we'll be installing, they won't be able to generally do that. They'll need to pull into the driveway or block the driveway or park on a side street, one of the intersecting streets to Mcclellan, and make their delivery. So it'll be a little bit more challenging for those drivers, but I think in the end it'll actually be safer because they won't be blocking a bike lane in order to make their deliveries.
Okay, yeah, definitely there is some inconvenience there that we need to weigh. Okay, thank you. Leon, do you have anything?
Yeah, okay. So, do we expect the speed limit to be reduced from what to what on this street?
Well, that's a good question, and we won't know that yet. So the way that speed limits are determined through taking radar surveys of the cars that are driving down the street, determining the predominant speeds of traffic, and then setting the speed limit accordingly. We just completed an effort of that sort on all of our streets citywide last year. And so generally when the condition of a street changes or something changes along a street that has the potential to affect speeds, then what you would generally need to do is go out and perform a new engineering and traffic survey along that street to see if the speeds have changed, and if they have, then set a new speed limit according to those predominant speeds. So that's something we will need to do once this project is completed and determine if a new speed limit would be appropriate.
Before I forget, thank you so much for making this to this step. I know that this part of this section of the project is much harder, and you were able to make this happen. Thank you so much. I know a lot of complications along the way. And I think the west part is already finished, right, since last year. So did we find that we have to reduce the speed, or that also hasn't been decided yet?
Anecdotally, we feel that the speeds have been reduced, but we haven't gone out and done a formal study of it yet.
Okay. And then I'm a little concerned of the divider that might not be visible at night. Because there are no polars, I'm not sure if there is enough reflectives on the divider. I know that for the west part, west of Stelling, some people complained that then we have to adjust. So have you made those similar adjustments when you are designing this part? So what you have made?
Yes. So yeah, every project has a certain number of lessons learned, and the phase one of the Mcclellan project was no different. So yes, we will certainly be making enhancements to the islands to make them more visible, which will include painting the noses white as part of the project, putting reflective posts on the nose, painting a white edge line along the divider, and putting white reflectors along that white edge line. All of those things will be done with the project to make them visible.
So this section you have enhanced the design based on the experience on the west part.
Yep.
That's good to know. Thank you. That's all.
You're on mute, Mayor.
You want me to go next?
Mayor's muted.
I don't have any questions.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go, John.
Okay, so just a few questions. So first off, we've got several emails from residents about the parking and safety concerns. Have they received a response to their emails? I mean, they may speak tonight, but it's a kind of a one-way discussion. There's not very many, so I'm thinking that we can do make sure that their questions were at least checked and replies done.
Yes, I have replied to both residents through email.
Okay.
I cannot, of course, be assured that I've satisfactorily addressed all of their concerns, but I have been in touch with both of them.
Okay, so there's a third one. I'm not sure if this is since you did that. There was a Ken Bell, a Ram, Saparthi, and then a William Uplinger. So just so you know that there's still one more.
Okay.
Okay, so then.
I think Councilmember Willie, that Ram is prepared to do, he's preparing public comment.
Yes, that is
He typed in
true.
earlier.
Yeah,
But-
his hand is raised.
Yeah, but we may need a little bit more of a response than we can do here tonight on the fly. So that's where, just acknowledging that it'll be looked at. Next thing, question. So I like that Mayor Scharf brought up the garbage trucks. I would ask that, can we have Recology prioritize Mcclellan Road for the optimum, probably the earliest route for the garbage service, rather than just leaving it at whatever it is today, that because this is such a crucial and now a challenging street, that they prioritize that their trucks, the regular garbage, the recycled garbage, the rubbish bins, are really taken care of before the commute traffic starts.
Yeah, I can chime in on that, Councilman Willie. Absolutely, I can talk to Recology about that. We did similar things several years ago on Bub near the tri-school area, because we had an ordinance to remove bins, within 24 hours of them being set out. And so we had some unique times getting set up, but I will follow up on that.
Maybe an additional question. So, okay, the changes get made on the street. I'm thinking that maybe a lot of, maybe some residents won't really be tuned into the fact of their garbage bins blocking the bike pathway and also the contribution to the impact on the traffic. Are you, or have you sent out notifications that on that street that they happen to live on, the bins blocking the roadway are especially important? Again, trying to set up for success here.
Sure. I know that was an original concern we had on the Phase 1 project, David, but I don't believe that really materialized to having any issues at all. Not that I heard.
Yeah, we spoke to each of the property owners, Phase 1, and explained how things are going to work with garbage collection, and everybody was cooperative, and we haven't had any issues that I know of that haven't been worked out. I don't know if that same door-to-door has been done yet for Phase 2, just because of the coronavirus shelter in place has made door-to-door difficult. But the outreach will be done somehow, either that way or through door hangers or mailings to those residents before the project is complete, so that they are informed as to how the garbage collection will work.
Great, thanks. Like I say, set up for success if at all possible. The last question I've got is, what is the bus traffic on Mcclellan? Is it non-existent, or is there bus traffic on Mcclellan?
There is bus traffic on Mcclellan. There is a VTA bus route, and VTA has been, they worked with us during the design phase of the project, and the accommodation was made for the existing bus stops.
That's what I had heard, but I wasn't sure that it was truly correct or not. So now, how many bus stops are on McClellan?
I believe there are 2 in that section of the
And
corridor.
at those bus stops, where are the buses? Are the buses going to be in the bike lane, or are they going to be in the traffic lane?
They will pull to the curb as they do now.
Okay, so then the bike lane is obstructed. Okay, well, it's a lot less bicycle traffic than vehicular traffic. So at least vehicular traffic can be able to continue to traverse the street?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Darcy, you have anything?
No, Mayor Scharf, I don't have any questions.
Great, okay. We will bring it back to public comment. So I've got 4 hands raised. Can someone explain to people how they raise their hand if they're calling in? Because apparently I missed someone on oral communications, but I did not see a hand raised.
Calling in, Mr. Mayor, they press *9 from a telephone. If they're using the online feature, then there is actually a raise hand feature that they can select.
Okay, great. All right, so I have 4 hands raised for this agenda item. First is Neil Mcclintock. Welcome.
Hi. I know that this says Neil Mcclintock, but my name is Shivani. Thank you, Neil, for giving.
I'm sorry. That's why I didn't recognize you earlier, because Neil had already spoken, and I saw him raising his hand a second time with the same name. So I apologize for that.
No, actually, I logged in from my regular email on my laptop, kavaluru.shivani@gmail.com. I have my laptop in front of me and raised my hand to speak for a while now.
Okay, yeah, you're showing up as Neil Mcclintock. That's why.
I think after telling Neil what had happened, he might have tried to
Oh, I see. Okay.
speak as a result of something not computing. Okay, so one thing that I do want to talk about is I definitely feel like hearing the phrase, that's enough of that on a matter that has to do with LGBTQ issues in Cupertino is really demoralizing and disappointing. I have been present on this meeting for a while, not using Neil's email, but using my own. And I think to go and speak about erasure of LGBTQ voices, I personally, let alone the Rainbow Crosswalk issue, as far as this meeting goes, felt really demoralizing and just felt like queer erasure, which happens time and time again. Like Neil, I didn't come out until college. My high school at Lynbrook was filled with homophobic slurs. Cupertino was unsafe and toxic and still is for a lot of my peers to come out. Visibility matters. And it's a problem if you suppress gay voices at a council meeting, and it's a problem when you refuse to act with urgency on something so simple that true crosswalks already have, not in a rainbow, but in other muted colors, as JR pointed out. Something so simple that would show visibility for the queer community, that Cupertino is having such hesitancy on this matter. I know JR brought it a while back, and whether or not it's an official agenda item is not what I'm here to speak about today. It's the mere fact that we shouldn't be talking about technicalities. We shouldn't be debating whether or not an entire group of people deserve to have their identities considered valid or not. It's a literal crosswalk. The technicalities are inherently homophobic. It's a couple of paint on a couple of asphalt, and we really should not be debating whether or not, the fact that it's being debated alone is erasure of the queer community. No one of my peers came out, myself included, in Cupertino. And a crosswalk would be the bare minimum to start the ball and get it rolling in Cupertino to have more queer visibility. I originally actually started crying when I heard the phrase, "That's enough of that." Because it shouldn't be. I was on this meeting just like everybody else from my laptop. And I shouldn't have had a friend phone in just so a queer brown woman could speak. And I hope the city council does better by me and everybody else, because a lot of folks here who are queer don't feel like coming out, and Cupertino needs to look at this problem head on. And a couple of, pieces of paint on asphalt shouldn't be the end of the world. It should be the easiest decision, because we have so much more to do in terms of supporting the queer community in Cupertino.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ram Sripathi, welcome.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you. Yes, welcome.
All right, great. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to voice my concern on removal of the parking lane. So I don't know how to start, but I can, as a long-time resident of the street, I've been living here 15 years. The problem of parking and traffic has actually increased a lot. The pictures that Mr. David showed recently is because there's no school traffic, there's no Dianza traffic. It is completely wrong, because you don't have the problem of backing out into the street at say 8 o'clock in the morning through 10 o'clock, or from 5 through about 7 in the evening. It's literally impossible. People speed up as you try to back out. I'm lucky because I have a double driveway, I have a circular driveway, so it's easy for me, but a lot of the residents here suffer through that. Either they have to back up and keep the car, or they have to back out into the street. So that's problem number one. To back into the street is really difficult, because you have to stop traffic now and make sure that there's nobody behind you, and then back in. So that's a big problem. First of all, I support the bike lane. It's not that I don't want the bikers and traffic just coexist as they do today. So that's one problem. A lot of us get visitors because of shelter in place. I'm pretty sure none of us are getting visitors home at this point of time. So again, those pictures probably don't really convey the real image. So my suggestion there is to have some kind of, you don't have a divided lane, have a clear, have a lane with some kind of a gap, like that's what's on Stelling Road. So that way both can coexist. People can park on the street, because visitors can park, delivery people can park, even repairmen can park. Imagine there's an old person who's coming home. They have to park in the side street, and they're across this busy street. And that's not right. My daughter's friend, she had an accident a year or two ago where they were crossing the street and someone hit her. They deliberately just speed up when they see people coming. And these are not things that you do a spot check on and you can find it. These are all realities of living on Mcclellan Road. There are about 15 homes here, and then there's an equal mix of old people and everybody else. The older people, obviously, they didn't join the call today. I went and spoke to everyone. No one wants the bike lane, really. No one wants the divided bike lane. Everybody wants, the bike lane's okay as long as we don't lose the parking space. And also I see the problem with garbage trucks. Where are we going to put the garbage? Do we put on the other side of the biking lane? So it just seems like a whole lot of mess that's going to just get created. And once shelter in place opens up, is removed, the Dianza traffic would start, high school traffic starts, and then it's back to the same mess again. So my request to you is to not remove the parking, keep it the way it is, but have a barrier in terms of space so that both of, cars and parking and cyclists, everyone's safe.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Jennifer Griffin. Welcome, Jennifer. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Sharp. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I just had a couple of questions. I think the presentation was really good. The graphics were good to explain to everyone what was happening with the bike lanes. Frankly, looking at the pictures, the fact that one of the pictures had garbage cans out, I think, or you all were talking about that. Where are the garbage cans supposed to go? Where are they supposed to go in front of the resident's driveway? Or where, I guess my question is, where are you supposed to put the garbage cans? You don't want to impede the bikeway, but you can't really put them out in the middle of the slow lane in front of the property. So I'm just curious. Also, I'm concerned about the Amazon. Let's face it, in the middle of the pandemic, everyone is having everything delivered to their homes. It is amazing that you've got food, you have baby care products, you have Amazon trucks, you have FedEx trucks, mail trucks. I'm really concerned that there isn't going to be a place for these delivery trucks to safely park, and they're going to be out in the middle of the road because of the barrier. Another question is, what happens when, I guess it's the two you were talking about was Mcclellan and Pacifica, when they come up to Dianza Boulevard, these bike lanes, do we have to change the signals in some way on Dianza Boulevard to accommodate the bikes coming in to Dianza Boulevard? We haven't talked about that. The other thing I will say is, frankly, I've been at Stelling and Mcclellan when you're trying to turn right on Stelling to go past the 7-Eleven, and traffic stacks up. You can't make a right turn anymore. I understand this is to be safe, but the traffic stacks and you have to wait. So I think it would be better to have maybe smaller barriers that you could actually, if you had to drive over, it wouldn't hurt the undercarriage of your car. I would be scared to try to back out because of my driveway. I don't live there, but I looked at the pictures, and I would, if you had to swing out, you could run the back of your car over that barrier and take your undercarriage out or your transmission. I just think anyway, I just had some questions about that. If you all could talk about it, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Roger or David, can you comment on where the garbage cans would go?
Sure, Mayor, I can do that. So the garbage cans are going to be placed basically next to the nose of the islands that separate the bike lane from the vehicle lane. So at the driveways, there's the space between islands. There's a fairly long gap at the driveway, which allows room both for cars, to maneuver into out of the driveway, as well as room to put the garbage cans next to the nose of the median, so they won't impede the bike lane or the vehicle lane or the cars trying to pull into and out of driveway.
I mean, is it possible to paint something there that shows where, like a rectangle that shows where people should place it?
Yeah, we can look into doing that. We're hoping that with some education, people will learn, where we'd like them to put their garbage. But we can certainly look at doing something like that if we need to, sure.
All right, thank you. Next, Peggy Griffin, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Mayor Scharf, council members and staff, I just want to point out that I'm asking you not to require delivery trucks or even ask them to pull into a home driveway. Our driveways are not built for the weight of these delivery trucks, and that's why they stop on the street. So don't even put that as an option. You can crack things, driveways, and also pavers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peggy. Next, we have Govind. Welcome, Govind.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I don't live on that side of Cupertino, but my main concern is that, first of all, I think the 11-foot on each side, that's going to be a lot of constraint because I have a 11-foot driveway and I know that's very difficult to even, negotiate because it's a little bit arced. So I think 11-foot is a kind of like slightly constrained kind of driving condition. The second thing is that though they are talking about the garbage being put out, but typically the garbage, garbage trucks, they actually don't place back the garbage can exactly on the spot where it is placed. They kind of, they just roll it and it goes somewhere. So I think in some way, I think this, I do like the idea of a bike lane being there, but at the same time, I think this road is used so often that I think having garbage cans coming into the center of your, path of, driving, those things are pretty dangerous. So I think in some way we need to figure out whether this kind of design is really going to be working with, all these garbage cans and also the delivery trucks and all that kind of stuff. Maybe we need a rethink to find out how to do this in a more safer fashion. I mean, that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next and last is Mooney. Welcome, Mooney.
Good evening, Mayor. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and the City Council. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I'm also on Bike Commission, so I'm not speaking as a commissioner. I'm speaking as a resident living on the Mcclellan Road. So a couple of points that I want to bring to your attention. So one, garbage can issue, that's a real issue that needs to be addressed. I don't remember, that getting sufficiently discussed in the Bike Commission or somewhere else. Today I was just biking. I joined this call, when I was at Stanford, and I was coming back and just came home and joined from home now. But on Mcclellan, when I was going up on the section where it's already completed, there is the first house right after 85 crossing. They had a garbage truck, right in front of their driveway on the bike lane today. And I was trying to pass it, and I had to come to the car lane. There is a car, trying to speed up and get past me. Car is well behind me, but trying to cut, so the expectation was, the driver was expecting me to stop a complete grinding halt at the trash can, and so that the car can go straight. But then I was going at a good speed, so I had to, come to the bike lane. The car guy had to, jam his brakes. So it's an accident waiting to happen. So I experienced it, firsthand today. So there was just one house on Mcclellan that kept, trash can on the bike lane. We have a lot of homes, on this section of the road. So we need to really, think about how we want to solve that, right? So, so that's one. And the second issue is we do have to give an option for the residents to have a dual driveways, at their homes. So, like for example, my neighbor Ram said, he is lucky to have dual loop so that he's able to get in, get out. I don't have that, so I'm thinking of doing it. So maybe more residents want to do it, because as it is, backing out of our driveways into the street is a big challenge. With a separated bike lane, it's going to become even more challenge, because you need to back further out into the street, because the street is very narrow. So that is something that I would like the city to work with residents to give that option if people want to have that. I personally want to have that dual driveway option to my house. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all. Let me go up and down, see if there's any more hands raised. No, that is it. So we'll bring it back to council for discussion now. Let's see, who would like to speak?
I can start.
Okay.
So a couple additional thoughts came up. So the first one, still right after the garbage discussion and issue that the resident just brought up, is it, on the street that I live, we are deliberately supposed to put the garbage cans in the street, and the truck essentially makes a straight line down the street, just stopping at each house, picking up the garbage. But I'm concerned that, we really do create this separated bike lanes, but then these garbage cans are really an obstacle. So is it possible to check with Recology and see if they do have a longer reach arm, for, a truck with a longer reach arm, or rather than staying on the street, in a straight line where the truck driver just drive, stop, that he actually pulls into the bike lane to grab the garbage can off of the driveway. And while he's blocking the bike lane, it's only for, a minute while he's emptying the can, as opposed to the garbage cans being there, 1 to 2 days, depending on when the resident puts them out and when the resident takes them back. So I'm not sure Roger can answer that about maybe a longer reach, or that the trucks actually pull to the side, if the residents know to leave their garbage cans on their driveway on the approach, as opposed to in the street.
Now, Councilman Willie, I wouldn't recommend either. We had concerns on the phase one, but they just weren't realized. We had ample space there at the nose, as David Stillman spoke of, and we've had good compliance and education with those residents. We had inquired with Recology about the prospects of a longer arm, and I think one concern that just came up is, when that arm is stretched out there, that someone could come through and just hit the arm, a cyclist. So I'm just pleased to report that it's been working well on phase one. I have every expectations it'll work well on this reach as well.
Hey, and Roger, to be a little more specific about that, if you look at the homes on the stretch that's finished, right across the street from the Deanza gate facing, it's just between Stelling and
Rose Blossom.
Yeah, and Rose Blossom, we haven't gotten any complaints there, and that's where you see the cutouts and the trucks can get in there appropriately, and that's probably where the garbage pickup you're talking about is happening.
Right. The issue I see, and someone brought this up, is it's fine when the resident places their cans properly for pickup if in, kind of in that cutout, so it's not in the bike lane or in the street. But when the truck is done picking up the bins and puts them back down, and I see this all the time when I'm biking, is they're all over the place. They're in the bike lane on Blaney all the time. So how do we get Recology to be a little more careful that they put the bins back where they picked them up from?
Well, and I certainly will do that. And Recology, they do have a good history of being responsive with us. So I did take note of that idea from Councilman Willie, and also just in terms of being really efficient in getting the pickup done. So I will make that call to Recology.
So I have one other question, and that is, Mcclellan is a pretty long road, and from the times I've been there, when I've headed over to Kennedy School and stuff, it seems to me I wasn't really paying too much attention at the time, but now as I think back, that it's not quite as straight as a lot of our residential areas. And so the question I ask is, are there a few pockets where there might still be some parking if you attempted? You might need some gutter or curb moved slightly. When you showed that picture earlier, the aerial picture, you could kind of see that maybe about 60% has residences, and then 60% is not really residences, it's either businesses or other types. And so maybe in those areas, you might be able to put 3 or 4 parking spaces. When you figure that, like the residents that are sensitive to losing complete parking, where would they go? Well, if you did have a couple pockets, even if it required, you know, a little bit of curb modification to get, you know, 2 or 3 parking spaces, those would really help for the times that they do have guests, especially elderly guests. So is it possible to look to doing that, even if there is some cost for maybe moving a little bit of the curb at some spot?
You know, David could speak more of it, but from my understanding, Councilman Willie, it would just reduce the, if we were to have some limited areas with parking on one side, it would reduce the other widths of the lanes to such a minimum that it just wouldn't be a recommendation to do it. You know, to still have the 2 separated bike lanes on both sides and allow parking, you know, the space has to come from somewhere, and it just gets to where it's just too narrow, and it just wouldn't be a recommendation that we make.
Okay, just keep your eyes open, you know, and if you did spot, you know, I believe there's that one tree that's kind of gregarious on Mcclellan. I mean, if there is an area that, well, you're not going to tear out that, I don't think you're going to tear out the tree. So conceivably on each side of the tree, maybe you had a spot for a car to park or something, but just being aware of that.
Sure. Yeah, I know if you're talking about the tree that's on the south side, east of Stelling.
I think that's the one, yeah.
That's where we recently required the right-of-way. And, yeah, that tree will be removed.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, Leon. You have anything?
No.
Okay. Darcy?
I don't have comments.
Okay. Rod?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of this. I will tell you that I regularly bike in the segment from the 7-Eleven to past Stelling, where the trail currently goes. And perhaps Recology is doing something, being more careful there, but I really am not having a challenge in weaving past cans. It works rather well. You know, I'm encouraged to see the children that are now enabled to bike in this pathway. It obviously is a major conduit, this road. So one way or the other, we either have cars or we have bikes coming to Monte Vista, Kennedy, Lincoln. And, you know, from my perspective, the first phase of this has gone swimmingly well. And yes, there is an inconvenience in having to stop rather than be able to continue on a right-hand turn, wait till the green light goes. But I think, you know, given what Roger has told us about safety standards, we don't know how to do that on a periodic basis. So I'm in favor of moving this project forward. I don't know if you would entertain a motion on both of the items or just on 23.
Yeah, let's do 23 first. I mean, I have a couple of comments, and then you can move it. So I think the prohibition on parking is definitely an inconvenience, and I sympathize with the residents on that. But on the other hand, you know, these are public streets. In many cases, the city can allow private vehicles to park on their property, and in some cases they can't. And this is one of the cases where, for the greater public good, we are going to have to remove private parking on a public road. I know one resident mentioned that just let cars park in the bike lane, but I mean, there's no point in that. You may as well not have a bike lane if the cars are going to park that. It makes it more dangerous because the bikes have to keep weaving around cars in the bike lane back into traffic. It's the same thing I see now when a car illegally parks in a bike lane. The bikes zoom out into traffic, often without looking. You're better off not having a bike lane at all in that case. It'd be safer. I also sympathize about backing out. I guess, it's not really more traffic, but it is going to be narrower because you're going to have to back out all the way into the narrower lane than you have now. But like Rod, I am supportive of this, so I will entertain a motion.
Oh, sorry, I have some comment now.
Well, I think per our procedure, I'm allowed to bring a motion.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a second, and then we have discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, and then we can have more discussion.
Thank you. So I would ask the clerk if she could conduct the first reading, and then I'll make a motion.
This is the first reading of ordinance number 20-2210, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cupertino amending table 11.24.150 of the Cupertino Municipal Code relating to prohibition of parking along certain streets.
So I would move that ordinance number 20-2, can you give me that again?
2210.
Thank you. 2210 be read by title only, and the clerk's reading constitute the first reading thereof.
Okay, I will second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, Leon, go ahead.
Okay. So a comment and a question. Comment is to the residents. I think we do need to provide safer, separated bikeways. We will need to introduce this in more streets in the city. It will be taking parking spaces away. It's inconvenient at first. It's something we do need to get used to if we want safer biking and safer road. But as we are at the staff, they have done everything they can to do the best design, but then they might not have thought of everything. So if something doesn't work or you think something can be improved, please don't hesitate. Talk to the city staff and talk to the city manager. They have always responded very well to residents' requests to have better design, to improve safety, maybe improve visibility, anything we can do to make it easier, safer for everyone. But I'm sorry that we do have to take away parking space, and then you do need to park on side streets. As the city moves to more and more denser right now, this will happen in more areas in the city. This is just the beginning. And then a question is for the staff. I think Mooney mentioned about double driveways. Is that so that the car can go in one entrance and exit in the other entrance? Do they need permission from the city to do that, or can they redesign their front yard to allow this kind of configuration?
Councilmember Chow, I took that to be like a horseshoe driveway.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, the circular driveway.
Do they need permission?
Yeah, an encroachment permit would be required because they're accessing the city street, and there may be some.
Oh, the other side would be the divider that's blocked.
There could be some setback requirements from their side yards that they'd have to follow, but there is a process.
But if they add a driveway in the area where there is lawn right now, there will be divider. We would have installed a divider there, but if they add a driveway, we'll have to pass through that divider, right? So it might not work.
Right, because there's generally just one driveway per frontage, and we would have already configured our separated bikeways to. So
unless they can somehow configure it to be a circle that still goes in and out through one entrance, there probably is not space.
That would be a challenge.
So two driveways would be tough because then add more.
Likely would be.
Also more dangerous, more danger to the bikes that's riding through also, right?
Well, if they
They
had
just need a special permit if they want to do that.
there'd be an encouragement permit, and planning would review the side yard setback requirements.
Likely we won't allow it because
It'd be case by case. I wouldn't say no, but it'd have to be evaluated.
Right, you would need another cut in the separation, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you would.
So how many circular driveways are out there now? I guess there's at least one.
I don't know. David,
I didn't
you
look at
observe,
that.
I don't know. There are a few. I recall seeing them.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So if there's no more discussion, Kirsten, can you conduct a roll call vote?
Councilmember Chow?
Aye.
Councilmember Sinks?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Mayor Sharf?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, wonderful. Now let's go back to that consent item. Let me get back to my agenda if I can find it here. Let me go to the other computer. One second here. There we go. Okay, so this is consent item 13, the awarding of the construction contract. So, yeah, we pulled this. Is there any discussion on this? Now that we've already done 23.
Doesn't sound like it.
Okay, seeing no discussion, I will move that we award the construction contract for the, well, can I just move item 13, 20-7242? I don't need to read the whole thing, I don't believe.
Kirsten?
You need a second, please?
What?
Mayor, we need a second?
Yeah, I need a second.
I'm sorry, I dropped out from the end of the last item. What's going on right now?
Oh, we're back to item 13 that was pulled from consent. This is the awarding of the construction contract.
Yeah, I apologize. It's just like it cut out and I just suddenly am back. So thank you.
Okay, so I moved we award the contract.
Yeah, John just seconded it. John?
Okay, let's have a roll call.
Councilmember Chow? Councilmember Chow, you're muted.
Aye.
Councilmember Sinks?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Paul?
Aye.
Mayor Sharf?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we've been going for about 2 hours and 20 minutes now, so let's take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 9:10 p.m.